Okay. All right. So first of all, thank you for joining us today and taking time out of your schedule to come and give us some African stories and to tell us a little bit about your background and giving advices to college students right now. So thank you so much for that. So I'll get started with the agenda for today. I'll start with some words of welcome, and then we'll start with the first story, and which is titled Njabala, and then the second one, which is King of Birds, and then we'll have a set of questions for our special guest, and then we'll close with some remarks and gratitudes. All right, so I want to give a little background on NAfSA. So the National African Student Association is committed to empowering young African students abroad for success academically and professionally. And we are doing something called NAfSA Talk, which is like a webinar where once a month we host people from different backgrounds, from different areas of life to come and give us a talk about a specific theme. And today we are exploring tales from Africa. And I personally, my name is Njabala. I am the president of the National Executive Board for NAfSA. And I picked this theme because growing up every night, I would hear tales about the beautiful days of Africa when I was younger. And they would go from stories about mystic African spirits to some others about animals living in society just like ours. And the common ground of all those stories was the sense of belonging they would provide to me and all of the children sitting in the circle to hear the story. They would entertain us and provide us with valuable lessons about humility, respect, community, and everything that makes all of the cultures over our continent beautiful. With the help of everybody present today, NAfSA is trying to bring you one of the most beautiful parts of African culture, which is oral narration, which has been the backbone of transmitting our histories throughout the years and through all the hardships faced by our people. Thank you for taking the time today to join us and learn more about African folklore tales. And we are as excited as you to hear more about those stories. All right, so for today, I'm bringing you 3 panelists. The first one is Femi Fadugba. I hope I didn't mispronounce that. If you want, you can unmute yourself and also give us a brief introduction. We can start with Femi, if you can unmute yourself.
Yes, just an intro, right? A brief introduction, you said.
Yeah, just a brief introduction, yeah.
Yeah, so good afternoon, everyone, firstly, and thank you for setting this up and for having me. My name is Femi Fadugba, and I guess I've done a few things, but in a past life, I was a physicist by training, I guess, and did work in, well, I guess published in quantum computing at the time. But then I went into the world and did a few things and finally ended up finding, I guess, my lease of creativity in writing. And so I write young adult books, sci-fi, and also do some things on the side with kind of video games, virtual reality. So yeah, storyteller in a few different formats.
All right, thank you so much. I think we can go with Christopher next.
Yeah, so hello everyone. Hope you're all doing well. And my name is Christopher Sematimba, and I'm a filmmaker at Timber Productions House, creative director at SETV Africa, and the head of production at Einstein Rising. I work with, basically, let me stop there maybe.
Oh no, you can go on.
Okay. All right. So I'm a Ugandan. creator. I do create content. I do curate content for different TV stations and also different digital media platforms. And one of them is actually ACTV Africa, which is dealing with more into the green spaces. We are trying to see that we tell stories that are going to impact people so that they can change lives in the green space. We all know about climate change and whatever is happening. So we are there to bring out those stories that about the impact of climate change and how we can make it better for the world. Yeah. So that's me for a little bit.
Thank you so much for this introduction. And we can go with Akina. I hope I did not mispronounce this.
Yes, hi. I was actually getting to that. It's actually Akilah.
Oh, sorry.
It's all right. Well, it's all right. That's okay. Hello everyone. I'm so happy to be here and thank you for having me. My name is Akilah Noble. I am a author of 2 poetry books, but also I am the National Ozone Officer for my country, Guyana. And besides all of that, I still find writing as a passion of mine. So it's just something that I do just to extend a piece of myself to the world, things that people are afraid to talk about, healing journeys, things that they're prevalent happening in society, but most women are not able to speak up about it. So I think that's what my writing helps people to do. So yeah, that's basically all about me.
All right. Thank you so much for your introduction. And my name is Njabala. As I said, I serve as the national president for the National Executive Board at NAfSA. I am an undergraduate student doing mechanical engineering. All right, let me admit that person. And this is my first year serving as the national president. So that's pretty much everything about me. All right. So I believe we can get started with the first story, which is Njabala. Christopher? Christopher?
Sorry, my network had
Oh, yeah.
become a little
worries.
bit faulty. But yeah.
Yeah,
So
the floor is yours. Yeah.
thank you so much.
Mhm.
Thank you so much. All right. So I'm going to be narrating for you a story called Njabala. And this story is an African folktale, most especially Ugandan. And what I can say about this, a brief about this story, before I get into it, is that Uganda is a country that has so many tribes, and we have so many ethnic groups. And some of those ethnic groups, I would specifically mention one, which is the Buganda. And Buganda is one of the dominant ethnic groups that we know, and it's part of the Bantu. It's a tribe, part of the Bantu ethnicity. Yeah. So here we're told stories about, they used to tell us every evening before we went to bed. They would narrate to us stories about our heritage and how things work in the Uganda, or how things work with the Baganda. And one thing I would make clear is that Buganda is actually more of a patriarchal society, and most of the time we would look at the men being more dominant than any other species. Yeah. Sorry, not species, but than any other people. Yeah. So so I'm going to dive right into the story. I'm not going to put any visuals, but yeah. So the story of Njabala is more of an African or a Muganda girl who is lazy and really amounts to nothing when she grows up. So this is how the story begins. Once upon a time, there was a family which had this hardworking man as the father, and he was a hunter. And there's usually, as the hunters were, as the men would always go hunting, the women would remain home to do chores. So when time went by, they had to give birth to one child because that is all they could afford at the moment. So when this child grew up, the mother would not teach her to do anything. Every time she would tell her, you know what, you sit down, you are my child, I can do for you everything. So they would do everything for her. And Njabala turned out to be a very beautiful girl. She grew up and she was one of the most beautiful girls in the entire village. So her being pampered by the parents, both dad and mom, she was not able to learn how to do any house chores, whether cleaning, washing, or cooking, none of the above, not even cultivating. Yeah. So when time went forth, her father was going to went to hunt. So when the father reached the retreat at a certain point, and the dad was no longer seen, or he could not come back home anymore because probably he got issues along the way and he could not come back. So what happened is that Njabala remains with the mom alone. And when the mom remained with Njabala, she started getting worried because they would not have anything to eat. The dad has disappeared. He's no longer coming back home. So when the mom got worried, she got sick, and eventually she died. At this moment, Njabala was actually 16 years old, and she had no one, no relatives. Why? Because all the people that, all the relatives that they knew were, they had passed on. So Njabala remains alone, and what the village chiefs had to do was to find a way of putting her into a family. And at the age of 16, by then, you would be ready for marriage. So they got her a husband, and they took, and the man took her on. So the man that took her on was also a hunter, and he actually had 2 more wives, making Njabala the 3rd wife. So what happens with Njabala is the moment she got into marriage, she found the marriage very beautiful because the co-wives embraced her with a lot of happiness. They're like, you know, welcome to the family and all that, because for them, they were so used to the, you know, the polygamy. You know, it was something that was so normal back in the days. Yes, so a few days went by, and now they had to tell her, you know what? Yeah, we have welcomed you. We have been doing your chores. We have been washing your clothes, but now it's high time you start washing clothes. It's high time you start cultivating. It's high time you start doing all these chores that you're meant to do. And what happens is that Njabala knew not how to do anything. So the first time she is given to wash utensils, and she failed to wash utensils. She was breaking the plates, she was breaking the cups. And they had, when the husband came back, they reported her to the guy, and the guy just battered her. They beat her up because back in the days, it was so normal for the husband to beat up their wives and all that. So the next time, Njabala is also told, you know what, you need to cultivate. you need to go and dig food because her husband has to eat. But he could not do so. She could not do so because she did not know how to do it. And when the husband came back, he beat her up. He beat her up. Yeah. So what happened next is that she sat down and she was like, you know what? I think I'm fed up of all this beating me up and all that. She starts crying out to her mother because it's the mother that taught her how to be lazy, you know. And she used to sing a song, and it's in Luganda, my mother tongue. I'm going to sing it for you, and then I can tell you the translation of the song. Yeah. So the song used to be like this. Changu mama kwe yankuzange chejo. Changu mama kwe yankuzange chejo. Bwenjo zengoye tezinyirira tezitukula. Bwenjo zebikopo njasa byase tebitukula. Yeah, so she used to sing that song, and what it meant, or what it means, is that, mother, can you come and help me out, because it is you that pampered me. Every time I try to wash my clothes, they never go clean. They're never clean. I break the plates all the time. I cannot dig. So what happened after her singing that song, the ghost of her mother appears to her. So when the ghost of the mother appeared to her, she was in the garden. The mother caught a hole and started digging for her while singing for her a song that goes like this. Njabala, 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 toli nsanza muko njabala. Njabala, 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 toli nsanza muko njabala. Bakazi balima bati njabala, toli nsanza muko. Meaning that Njabala, may your husband never find me as I'm doing these chores for you. This is how women dig, trying to teach her how women dig at that moment. So she did that. It kept on happening now over and over again. And the ghost of the mom would always come, help her out. And Njabala became one of the most loved wives among the gentleman's wives. So time passed by. She used to do this without anyone seeing her. So when time passed by, so when time passed by, she came. Oh, sorry for what is distracting me. So when time passed by, Njabala was being one of the most loved women, or one of the most loved wives of this gentleman. And one time, the gentleman had to come back home very early. As he was coming back home, Njabala was in the garden digging, and it's actually the mother that was helping her dig, the ghost of the mother. So when he reached home, he went to look for Njabala, and he reached the garden and found the ghost of the mother of Njabala. And at that very moment, they chased the ghost away, and they had to get Njabala and cast her out of the home, and she lost her marriage. They called the village chiefs, and they told her, this girl is a witch. She cannot live with us. She summoned the ghost of her mother to come and help her do her chores. So that is how Njabala was thrown out of the village, and she lost her marriage as well. Yeah. So that would be the end of the story every time they would tell us the story. And the moral of the story would be, whenever you get a chance to be told how to do chores, please take it up, and then it will be helpful in future. That is what they used to tell us. Yeah. So thank you very much. That's my story.
Thank you so much. Your voice was really good. The songs were amazing. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
I also wanted to know, do you have any advice for college students trying to get into creative writing, movies, and the entertainment industry?
Yeah, okay. So basically, my advice to college students, I really don't know if it's the same system that is happening from your side, but you realize that so many of the college students, what they learn is actually not enough to thrive in the creative space. Whatever you learn in school is not enough to thrive in the creative space, because there's a lot of theories that we get to learn here and there, and we get to neglect the better thing, which is called the practice of things, and which we know that practice makes perfect. And this world is actually looking for people that are experienced than people that have studied. So if you have studied, it is actually it's adding on top, it's adding something to you in the creative space. Get out there, seek more knowledge. As you are studying, seek more knowledge. Do pro bono work wherever necessary. It doesn't require you to come out of school and you just become a filmmaker and all that. If you can volunteer on film sets without being paid, that is very good, because the knowledge you are seeking is quite more than getting paid at the moment. 3-4 years down the road, as long as you are consistent, it is actually going to pay you more than you might think. Yeah, that's one of the advice I would have for the creative, whoever wants to join the creative space from college. And the last one is that be as creative as you can. Whatever you can do, whatever you think of, just go out there, do it. Try and error, but never fail to try. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much for such wise pieces of advice. And we'll go now to the next story. Let me see. Which should be King of Birds. And I think this one should be for Akilah. So the floor is yours whenever you're ready.
All right, thank you again for having me. Yes, my story is entitled The King of the Birds. I would have selected this story one because it is one of the stories during our emancipation time here in Guyana that it's most times spoken and it's talked about a lot. And it's from one of our history books as well too. So it is a story that originated from the Zulu tribe, and it is told among most of the African families and the teachers during their class lessons. So this is just one of the stories, and it teaches you a lesson on leadership, that leadership is not about size, but it is about skill and wisdom. So I think I'll just go straight into the story. So I'm gonna narrate the story. So it goes something like this. So, sometime after the creator had finished making beast of the sea, land, and sky, as he was so busy putting the final touch to his work by creating people, Nakwazi, the great fish eagle, called a meeting of all the birds. And they came from the flamingo to the weaver, from the warbler to the owl. Everyone came. So Nakwazi began by clearing his throat, and all of the chatter died down, and everyone turned their gaze to this magnificent eagle. And he said, I've asked you here today for a very important reason. As you all know, that lion, the great Bubisa, is the king of the beast of the land, and he hardly dare speaks for us, the great winged eagle of the air. So it is my suggestion that we choose from among a number of the birds who will be our sovereign leader. So he cleared his throat one more time just to ensure that everybody had his attention, that they listened to him. So, as I am the most majestic bird, he continued, regal present, I suggest that I, Nkwazi, be the king of the birds. And a great mumbling started, and everyone from all of the corners of the gathering raised their voice, and so on. So, one voice rose above the others, demanding attention. So he started, yes, Nkwazi, you are indeed majestic. And it was the great eagle who is Kova. So however, I actually think that it is I should be the king of the winged animals. You see, I have the largest eyes of all the birds and I can see everything that happens. And therefore, I'm very wise. And with wisdom, that is what is needed in a leader more than stateliness. So another set of murmur went around the crowd, and a third voice decided to demand attention. And I acknowledge Kobo's wisdom and Nkwazi's regal bearing. However, I propose to be the king of the birds. Kori, which is Njiti, he's a bustard. He walked to the center of the circle as he spoke, and he said, I am the largest of all the winged kingdom. Certainly, strength is an important factor in leadership. So all the birds began to speak at once. Some threw their support towards the eagle. Some believed that the owl should be the king, while others believed that Kori should be the king. So finally, after a long period of arguing, and a little voice was heard rising from above the din. Excuse me, please. Nasidi, which is a tiny, small, quick-moving warbler, he was so small and insignificant, he was easily overlooked. So finally, the crowd became silent and allowed the little bird to say his part. So if we're going to elect a king, he started, I think it should be me. So everyone broke into laughter. Surely they're thinking, this miniature warbler shouldn't be the king of the birds. It's unthinkable. It's silly for even thinking that the audacity of this little thing, what arrogance, they all started murmuring and causing, a bit of a ruckus. So, and, one of the birds started, and what reason would we give for having elect you as our king? Nkwazi started, and, well, he continued, for no reason besides I say that I should be given every bit as much of an opportunity like everyone else. So they all laughed, but Nasidi continued and was impressed by this little fellow's courage. So what he decided that they needed a competition. They needed a contest to see who is fit to be king. Everyone seemed to like the idea, and it was agreed that on the first day of the full moon, all the birds would gather and they would meet in the open sky. And when the sun touched the tallest tip of the mountain, the birds would become airborne, and the one who could fly and touch the hand of God would become the king. On the appointed day, the birds all assembled and patiently waited for the sun to make its way down to the tallest peak of the mountain, and they all arose into the air. It was a magnificent sight to see. So now little Nasidi was there, and he was determined to prove that he had just as much right as everyone else to be the king. But he knew that his little wings could not lift him very far. He had therefore made a special plan. Just before the birds took off, Nasidi silently crept underneath the wing of the mighty fish eagle. He carefully pushed his way deep into the raptor's largest feathers, and Nkwazi, he was so busy concentrating on the descent of the sun that he didn't feel anything. So higher and higher the birds soared, and the little ones fell out of the race after a short time and slowly drifted back down to the earth to watch the others. So soon all three of the birds had dropped out of the competition. So it only left Eagle, Owl, and the Bustard to fight to see who would claim the prize. So they were so tired, but they pushed higher and higher and higher. But the strain was too much for the Owl, and he resigned and dove back down towards the farm ground. So it was now Nkwazi and Njiti up and up in the air, closer and closer to the hand of God. But no matter how much he tried, the feat was too much for the heavy bustard, and a final pull with his mighty wings, he called out to Nkwazi, Ah, my friend, it seems you are the winner. I can go no further. So that confession seemed to temporarily strengthen the almost spent eagle as he gathered his last bit of strength and climbed beyond the bustard. And he jumped into a very victorious sound, filling the sky because he thought, well, yes, he has now won. But now the little Nasidi came out and said, not so fast. He shot out from under the mighty bird's feathers and said to him, you have not won yet. And with that, Nasidi rose above Nakwazi to touch the hand of God. And no matter how hard Nakwazi tried, he didn't have the strength to climb any further. So with a groan, he allowed himself to begin gliding down to earth. Now all the other birds had watched this from below and they saw Nasidi's trickery and they were angry, they were upset. So when Nasidi returned to the soil, he did not find the kingly welcome that he had expected. Instead, every bird was ready to pluck every little feather from Nasidi's back. But the quick little bird saw their anger and flew into a deserted snake hole. And they called out to him, come out, Nasidi, come out and get the prize that you deserve. But he didn't come out. He stayed hidden in a little hole long after sunset, and they all waited for him to show. So although it was night, Nasidi had to come out for food, they thought. So in the morning, it was going on all through the night. Nasidi still hadn't appeared. So Nakwazi said, listen, I'm faint from hunger, and we all don't need to guard the hole. I suggest we take turns, and when the little joker decides to come out, all of us will be here. So the owl volunteered. He's saying that, you know what, I'm not very weak, I'm not very hungry as yet, so he doesn't mind taking the first watch. So he used a quick roster and drawn up that everyone can come back and relieve him within an hour or two, someone else will take over. So Owl was there being still and waiting and waiting and waiting, and it seemed like forever. So he finally decided that, you know what, I'm just gonna close one of my eye. After all, one of my eyes is bigger than the other and it can see better than any other bird. So he closed his right eye and peered out from the left. And several minutes later, he decided, you know what, I'm gonna switch to the left eye and I'm gonna open the right and close the left. So this went on back and forth, back and forth. And at one point, both eyes closed and he fell asleep. And that is the moment that Nasidi had been waiting for. So before the opportunity was lost, Nasidi shot out of the crowd, out of the hole, and he disappeared into the forest. Now, Eagle, who was on his way back to relieve Owl, saw the little creature and cried out to the owl, wake up, you fool! He shouted. You fell asleep and Nasidi got away. Well, Owl was so embarrassed by his mistake, to this day, he sleeps during the day and does his hunting at night. So none of the other birds will bother him about having been caught sleeping on the job. So Nasidi hides away in the forest, flithering here and there, never stopping anywhere long enough to be caught. And now the question is, who is the king of the birds? And the answer would be no one knows, because I think they're still arguing for the position all about up to this day. So I think that is the end of the story. But basically the moral of the story is just to say that, you don't have to be big, or you don't have to be strong or any of that in order to be seen as a leader. If you have wisdom and you have skill, then you can be a leader. So thank you.
Thank you so much for this story. Also, the same question for ask Christopher. Do you have any piece of advice for anyone trying to get into entertainment as a college student?
My advice. So I think my advice would be one that I would have received, let's say about 9 years ago. I got this advice from one of my teachers. I actually had the same question. I was wondering, what am I going to do with my life? Do I go into creative writing? Do I go into biology, or what exactly do I need to do? And his advice to me was that do something that in 10 years from now, when you wake up in the morning, you should feel happy that you're doing it. You should wake up feeling like you're proud of the job that you're doing. So if creative writing or being in filmmaking is something that you'd like to do, my thought or my thinking is that you should go ahead and do it. And mind you, it's going to be hard. There are going to be tough days. And this is what he said to me. You know, there's going to be tough days on your way to getting to that point. But in 10 years, when you wake up, you should feel accomplished. You shouldn't feel like you've wasted that 10 years of your life. So if you're going to be volunteering, if you're going to be doing any helping or work, anything that is going to move your career from one stage to the other, you should be happy doing it. And even though it's not easy, it's all going to be worth it in the end after you've accomplished that goal that you have in mind. So that would be my advice.
All right. Thank you so much for such a good piece of advice. I'm not really planning to go into creative writing, but I resonate a lot with it. Do something you like and you can be happy about in 10 years. So thank you for that. All right, so this is time for our guest speaker of the day. I have a set of questions that I planned. Let me just pull them up. All right. So Femi, could you tell us, I think you already did tell us a little about your background. Would you like to tell us a little bit more?
Yeah,
And
sure. I'm
Oh.
thinking about
Mhm.
what details would be most relevant. I mean, maybe I didn't mention, I guess, where I'm from. I was born in Togo. My parents are Nigerian. I'm Nigerian. I also spent pretty much the biggest chunk of my life in the UK. And so a big part of the influences that go into my stories come from that part of the world as well. And I've spent time in the US, and so I think my stories are a little bit of a hodgepodge of different influences. Certainly, I think there's a strong African element, but for instance, my debut book, The Upper World, was based in London, and in many ways, in terms of its sense of place, was hyper local, even though me as a person, I'm probably actually quite hyper global in a way.
Yeah.
But there you go.
Yeah. Also, how did your African identity impact your work?
I think it probably gave me some confidence. I wasn't always a writer. I didn't do English for my A levels or for university, and so I was more a science student, and I
Yeah.
always assumed that the world was basically made of two types of people: scientists and humanities people.
Yeah.
And I was a scientist and a proud one, and just assumed that that was my gift, and I wouldn't ever be able to cross over into the other realm. In terms of being a creative, a writer.
Yeah.
But I had a few conversations, quite pivotal ones, with different people who shifted my view on that. And one of the conversations was a woman I spoke to who basically said, if you can tell a story well in terms of speaking, if you're able to have a conversation with someone and tell a story and either make them laugh or make them concerned or make them in some way get involved, if you can do that with your words, then all you have to do is just write that down. and someone who reads it, there's a pretty good chance you'll be able to hook them in as well. And so I think that was great advice, because it almost helped me to find a more authentic voice. Then I think often people who have a strong writing background and have read loads and loads of books and always wanted to be a writer, I think there can be a bit of a hangover of wanting to sound like a writer when you write.
Yeah.
Wanting to come across as writerly. Whereas I think I came into it wanting to reflect the way I speak.
Yeah.
And so it was a bit of a shortcut to finding my voice in a way. And to answer your question, I think I probably got that ability to tell stories, to speak in a way, from my African heritage. I think, as I mentioned, I'm Nigerian, but I think this is across all of Africa, everywhere I've been anyway. Just a very strong oral tradition. And, our traditions tend to pass down information much more strongly. through the spoken word versus the written word. And so I
Yeah.
think, yeah, I have 101 uncles who will just sit down at parties and tell you a story for as long as it takes. And a lot of those stories are gripping. And, you know, my mom is also a storyteller as well. So she's influenced me in her own way. So yeah, definitely.
All right. On that note, what or who is your biggest source of inspiration when it comes down to writing your stories?
Yeah. This one's quite easy for me, and you know, it might be a bit controversial because I know that the central topic of this is African folklore.
Yeah.
But for me, it's definitely my faith tradition. The
Yeah.
biggest source of inspiration really are the stories from the Bible.
Yeah.
And connected to that, you know, you have the word and then you have the spirit, and so you have the written text of the Bible of these essentially a slave nation. You know, when Israel was under Egypt, they were a nation of slaves, and so you have a story of a God who picks of all of the peoples on the earth, picks the least, like the story that we just heard of, you know, not picking the strongest nation, but picking the least and bringing them into a place of you know, love and overcoming and of deliverance. And I think almost every story mirrors that narrative. And so I think there's the literature aspect or the word aspect of the Bible, but then I think coupled with that is the spirit aspect. And so, you know, I think that this idea of inspiration, you know, even within the word inspiration, you have the spire, the spirit aspect. And so I think whenever we are engaging in creativity, we're also engaging in being vessels for spiritual expression. And that's a longer discussion for a longer day. But for me, I think it's taken me a long time to really learn how to quiet my mind such that I can hear from the Holy Spirit and be a clear vessel for the light that I believe, you know, God's trying to bring into the world. And so for me, it's never been a human, actually, in terms of inspiration.
That was very inspirational. Thank you for sharing that with us. Also, I was wondering, so you mentioned the fact that you used to think there was like a science, you could be a scientific or you could be like in humanities, but how do you end up creating that duality, being able to be a part of both worlds at the same time? Because by going to school, they make you pick a major. So sometimes, how do you make sure you can get the best from both worlds?
Yeah, you know, I think so. Here's the deal, right? So they're the same, but also different. And so what do I mean by that? They're both languages. In fact, let me put it even more simply.
Yeah.
We live life. Life is a real thing. You know, we touch and see things, and we live our lifetimes. And it just so happens that the language that our lives are written in is written stories using verbal and written language. So that's the language that actually drives how we live our lives. Right. So we all live our lives according to stories that we've heard and inherited, either from our parents or community or God knows where. It just so happens that you also, in addition to having like our own biological life, you also have nature. So for instance, you know, the things outside your window, the air and the wind and all of these things, just the natural world. And it just so happens that the natural world, the language that the natural world is written in is mathematics. And so that's why physics uses maths, because it just turns out if you want to describe things in the physical world, you need to understand the language of mathematics. And so they're both languages, and all of the same faculties that you need to learn English or you know, French or Arabic or Spanish or, you know, whatever it is, they're the exact same faculties neurologically that you need to learn mathematics. It's just where your emphasis is placed during your education. And so, I mean, that would be, again, a longer discussion to really explain just why they're so similar. But really, language is just symbolic representation. and maths is just a bunch of symbols, and even words are utterances like a, u, a. You put them in a certain combination, and then you can create meaning from that. It's same with mathematics, but you use numbers and X's and Y's and Z's, etc. And so it's just an apprenticeship of language and meaning. And if and the constraint is time more than anything. So anybody who understands English already has all of the skills needed to learn mathematics. The question is, do you have a good teacher and do you have the time? And so, yeah, that's really what it's all about. It's difficult actually to make someone really good at both because they don't have the time. So even a very intelligent person with great teachers, most of the time they don't have enough time to be great at both English and maths, and so that's why you end up choosing. But I guess in the way it worked out for me was the first half of my life I did maths, and then the second half I'm kind of doing I'm kind of moving into the English realm. Sorry, that was a very long technical answer, but hopefully it makes sense.
That makes a lot of sense. Thank you for that.
Yeah, it was quite it was a deeper question. It was
Yeah.
quite a deep question actually that you asked me. I didn't know a way to answer it more simply than that.
Thank you for giving us an answer. Thank you so much. Also, what is one piece of advice you'll give to a student trying to figure out what they want to do in life and how to get there?
What they want to do in life and how to get there. Well, look, I think I know there's many books have been written on these kinds of things, how to find your calling, all kinds of things like that. I tend to believe that our calling in many ways is more obvious than we think. Actually, I think most people, when you ask them as a child what they wanted to be when they're older, the answer that they gave back then in many ways is 80% of the truth, but it just needs some refinement to really understand what from that childlike answer, how does that actually apply today? But even as children, we have a sense, we're given a sense of what our purpose is. And so how do you get back to that? I think it's really a matter of clearing away the noise and the comparison. And so let me be more practical. Social media. The average person these days, you know, and I for a long time, it's recently that I've had to, you know, in the last 2 years, I've made changes. But the average person, you know, if you're spending less than 5 hours a day on average on your phone, you know, or less than 4 hours, you're basically a monk in today's society. But that's insane because if you really think about it, if you want to do anything meaningful in this world and you're spending half of your day on your phone, you're kidding yourself. And if you want to grow, and if you want to find out who you are and what your drive is and where you're meant to be going, and discover those difficult questions, and yet you're spending half of your day filling yourself with trash and noise, you're kidding yourself. And so, you know, to be super practical, if you're a writer, this is a craft that involves introspection. It involves clarity. It involves, again, inspiration. And part of that, the cost is that you can't do certain things that other people can do. And so to answer your question, both as a writer and any person trying to figure out the calling, spend less time on your phone and stop comparing yourself and your dreams to other people's. And both things go together because the less time you spend on social media, the less you'll find yourself comparing yourself to everyone else.
That's very true. Thank you for that. I think I spend like 7 hours a day on my phone, but I'm not sure. So
okay, yeah. I understand, and even that's pretty average, maybe even slightly lower than average, but you can see how that's insane, right?
Yes, it is.
And so when we say, oh, I'm so busy, or oh, I don't have a time to do this, it's like, if I spent half of that amount writing or researching or reflecting, whew, can you imagine where you'd be?
Yeah.
It's crazy.
It is.
But we do it because everybody else does it. And so really you have to be willing to be different. You got to be different. If you want different results, you have to put in different inputs.
That's very true. That is very true. I also have I think I have two more questions. How do you fight the white page syndrome when you don't know what to write about, or when you don't know where to start, or just to get a head start on something?
Yeah, I understand. So there's art and then there's life. And the two support each other, but it's very important to know the order. And so life is more important than art. Very important to know that. And so, I mentioned my faith. Sometimes I get so wrapped up in my work and I just want to write, like, I need to write 3 chapters today and I have to do it, but maybe I get to the page and I just don't have any inspiration, right? That would be an instance of me saying, hey, I want to prioritize the art, the work. Whereas what's actually happening is God is saying, no, I need to fix you. Like basically what I'm trying to say is that the real reason for writer's block 90% of the time is that you need to fix something else in your life and then come back to the page. And so, there's some people, if it's a matter of discipline, then actually the answer is just come to the page every morning and just start writing. But if you're being disciplined and you're motivated, but it's not coming, it's because something else is going on in your life, and you might need to go for a long walk. You might need to call your mom and apologize. There's something else going on. Like there's a spiritual blockage. That's what's going on, and so you need to address that and not think that the art is going to fix your life. And once you fix your life, then it just flows out. Because I think the last thing I would add on that is, as writers, we're not people who conjure up ideas and make things up for fun. What we really are is we're witnesses. We come to the page and tell people about things that we've overcome so that they have a shortcut for overcoming it themselves. And so if you haven't overcome it in your life, you don't have anything to write about.
True. Thank you for that. Also, do you have anything else you would like to add, or anything else you'd like to say?
Nah, just a massive bout of appreciation for the stories that were shared today. I really enjoyed hearing them, and it's inspiring and cool to hear the different different voices, the different angles of those few stories. So yeah, thank you for the storytellers for their inspiration.
All right, thank you so much. All right, so I think we are reaching the end of the webinar. Thank you for joining us today, and thank you for taking some time outside of your schedule to listen to those amazing stories and to meet our special guests. As we come to the end of today's webinar, let us take a moment to reflect on the journey we've undertaken together. Throughout the stories shared, we've been reminded of the profound beauty and wisdom embedded in African oral traditions. These tales, filled with mystic spirits and talking animals, do more than entertain. They weave the fabric of community, teaching us timeless values of humility, respect, and unity. The narratives heard today are not just stories, they are the heartbeat of our cultures, echoing the resilience and creativity of our ancestors. They remind us of our roots and the shared heritage that bind us together as people through the voices of our esteemed speakers. We have witnessed how oral narration continues to be a powerful tool for preserving our histories and imparting crucial life lessons, even in the face of adversity. As you leave this session, I encourage you to carry forward the essence of these tales in your hearts. Share them with the younger generation. Let them serve as a beacon of our rich traditions and a reminder of the values that define us. Let us keep the spirit of storytelling alive, ensuring that these beautiful narratives continue to inspire and unite us for generations to come. Thank you for being a part of this special NAfSA talk. Your presence and engagement contribute to keeping our cultural heritage vibrant and alive. Together, let's continue celebrating and cherishing the heart of African folklore. Thank you so much for attending today. And I know it's a Sunday, so thank you to all of the speakers who took time outside of their busy schedules to come and talk to us and give us some precious advice on anyone wanting to get into creative writing, filmmaking, or just figuring out life as college students. My name is Njabala, and it was my pleasure being a moderator for this NAfSA talk. Thank you.
Diaji, I'm so sorry to interrupt. One, I wanted to apologize for being late. I was having all kinds of technical difficulties. I wanted to personally thank Benny for as you can see, he is just a treat. He's one of my favorite writers. I read his book, The Upper World, in about 2 or 3 days. And it had been a long, long time since a book made me feel and think like that. So I'm super appreciative of you attending. Same for you, Akilah. She's a very talented poet. Check out her page and her work. I really appreciate you both. Thank you so much. I'm so sorry for ending like that. Your ending was perfect. And then I just had to say that. Thank you.
No worries. Feel free to add anything you want. And thank you for joining us today. It was my pleasure. And thank you for helping me. You were like one of the biggest support I had. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
All right. All right. Thank you so much for joining us today. And I'll post the recording. It should be available on our page. So if anybody wants to check it out, just let us know. Thank you for joining us and have a good rest of your day.
Thank you.